Hello and welcome to Mom's Way to Wellness. I am your host, Aida Maravillas, and today we are talking about what small, sustainable self-care can look like. Today is episode 3 in our self-care series, so I hope that you've been listening to all of the episodes in this series. If not, you can just listen to this one and go back and listen to the other ones if you enjoy what you are listening to. I want to start with a question. Have you ever considered that self-care isn't about escaping from your life for a little while, but about learning to take care of yourself within the life you already have? According to the National Institute of Mental Health, self-care means to take the time to do the things that help you live well and improve both your physical and mental health. Practicing self-care helps you manage stress, lowers your risk of illness, and increases your energy. Those are all some very good benefits to self-care. And even small acts of self-care in your daily life can have a big impact. In today's episode, we are going to cover what small, sustainable self-care means, what it can look like, and practical strategies for how to incorporate self-care for your body, mind, and soul in your everyday life. Even though we're busy moms in the middle of the busy seasons, it's so important to find a way to incorporate it. I remember a commercial from when I was young. I used to see it a lot when I was growing up, where a woman would ask for a bubble bath product to take her away. If you're around my age, you know exactly what commercial I'm talking about. This commercial painted a picture in my mind of what self-care looked like. But over time, I realized that things like a bubble bath, a spa day, or a girl's trip, they can be nice, but they aren't necessarily the types of daily support that we can incorporate into our regular everyday life. Pampering, nights out, or even a women's retreat, they have their place. They do. They have a place in a way that we are able to practice self-care in those types of settings. But something that's more daily and sustainable and actually within reach is something that we need to find, something that we can incorporate. In the last episode in this series, I shared how self-care became a pivotal experience for me during the pandemic. I was overwhelmed, I was stressed out, and I needed to find a way to help my nervous system regulate. And I'm finding that that is more and more important every day, how to regulate my nervous system. And looking back now, I realized that I had already found some of those smaller forms of self-care before the world shut down. But I had to incorporate some of those things into my everyday life when change happened, when daily routines were not the same, when I didn't have access to going out to the gym, and I didn't have access to going out to work in a physical setting at that time. And as I realized this, I needed to find what I actually needed and figure out how to problem solve in that particular season that I was in. And so what ended up happening is I needed to ask my husband for help. And apparently it was the first time I asked for help in a clear way that he was able to understand and respond, because I actually knew what I needed and how he could help. And before that moment, I was used to pushing through whatever needed to get done, but it wasn't working for me. So I sent my husband a text after I took some time to notice how I felt and thought about how to phrase what I needed, because asking for help was hard. It's not something that I learned growing up necessarily, but it's something that's so important when we find ourselves needing our support system. I basically told him in a text that I was tired and I felt overwhelmed from juggling my work, remote learning with our youngest, and managing things at home, and I needed a break. I needed him to take over the schoolwork with our youngest daughter when he got home from work, if we weren't done yet, so that I could go for a walk and I can have a break from our house before starting on dinner and transitioning into the second part of my day. And his response was short, it was simple, it was okay. And I couldn't believe that I asked him for something that was so hard to do, and his response was so easy for him. And from that day forward, when my husband got home from work, he took over whatever schoolwork my daughter was still working on when I got and I got my break. We used to joke about it, or I used to joke about it. I used to say, my substitute teacher is going to be home any minute. You have until this time to finish the worksheet that you're working on. And it was a hard transition for my daughter. Don't get me wrong. It was hard for her, but I needed to put myself in the mindset that she was fine. It was something he could handle. She was safe. And even though she preferred mom, for whatever reason, I was her preferred parent for that particular activity, that didn't mean that I needed to stay within that particular activity, because I needed the handoff. I needed to be able to say thank you. Thank you for taking care of this for me, regardless of whether or not she was happy about the change. And so what was small and sustainable for me at that time was a walk. It was something that got me out of the house. It was movement. It was being in nature. And it was something that allowed me to disconnect. I was able to disconnect and calm my nervous system and reset for the second part of my day. It was time to turn off the mental load of making decisions, of helping others, or worrying about the schedule. I don't know why we were trying to keep a schedule with such an unpredictable time, but we needed to maintain some sort of schedule. Or watching the news, I limited my time watching the news, and that is what I needed at the time. I needed to disconnect from being the teacher and disconnect from being needed and from making those decisions. And really, before that phase in life where everything had shut down, I actually used to meet up with friends for walks on Saturday mornings. And I tried to take a walk every day during my lunch hour when I was working in a school setting. And those were small, manageable ways that helped me more than I realized. It's amazing that sometimes we don't realize how big of a deal something is until we don't have it anymore. And that's where I found myself. I did not have it anymore. And those small acts of self-care were actually, when they were gone, the weight of everything else felt heavier. And that's what happens when we neglect our needs over time. Everything else that we continue to juggle and continue to carry ends up feeling heavier. And sometimes the smallest forms of self-care are the most sustainable and have a bigger impact than we realize. And while it can feel nice to be taken care of, to feel pampered, to go out for that girls' night, filling your cup can also be found in quiet moments of everyday life. It can be found in moments that are not so quiet too. It could be found in laughter. It could be found in conversations around the dinner table. It can be found in conversations with your little one. It really can be that your cup is filled in our everyday interactions with kids. Our families can be incorporated in this practice. It doesn't have to be that we're doing it solo, that we're doing it alone. It includes taking care of the body that you've been given. It includes, going out by yourself, or going out with a partner, or going out with a group of friends, or even going out with your kids. The daily micro moments of care can go a long way. And so as we transition into the application part of self-care, there are a few questions that can help you reflect and get started. I do like asking questions. I do like to get you thinking about where you're coming from and how your needs are going to be met. And reflection is just part of that process. So as we walk through these questions, I am asking you to reflect on your answers for each one. If you want to just think it, if you want to write it down, if you want to look at the timestamp and come back to this and press pause and grab something, that is totally fine. But I want really for you to ask yourself, how do I feel? It might sound like such a simple question, but it's so hard for a lot of moms to answer. How do I feel? And when it's how do I feel, it's how do I feel and putting an emotion in place, putting a feeling in place, not a thought, not an opinion. For me, when I sent that text, I felt overwhelmed. I was able to say, I feel overwhelmed by everything that I have going on right now. The next question is, what do I need? And for me, in that text, the next sentence about what I needed was, I need a break before I go on to the next part of my day. And the next question I want you to reflect on is, what do I want? So how do I feel? What do I need? What do I want? And this is something that, again, within the context of this text that I sent to my husband, that I finally asked in the clearest way after being married for over 20 years at this point, maybe even 25. This is the best pivot in our marriage in terms of even communicating. I knew how I felt. I knew how I needed. I knew what I wanted. And I'm going to, again, go through that example. I said, I feel overwhelmed. I need a break. I want you to take over when you come home. Can you do this for me? And this comes to the next question. Really, can someone help me? Or do I need to do this alone? I had a support system. I had a partner that was willing to be involved. Depending on your season of motherhood, depending on what's going on, if you're nursing a newborn, then what help is going to look like might be somebody else making dinner or someone ordering out. It really, really just matters as far as what's going on in your everyday life and whether or not you do have a partner that you can count on or that is available to help in some of the ways that you need, because you do have to meet someone with where they're at, with what they're able to do as well. And the next question is really like, how much time? How much time do I have to incorporate self-care into my routine? If you don't have a lot of time, find gratitude for any small moments that you can find. I'm not a fan of getting up super early, but setting an alarm for 20 minutes before the house wakes up is something that helps me. I don't know what's realistic for you. We're all different. Some of us are morning people. Some of us are night owls. Maybe it's 10 to 15 minutes of quiet time after the kids go to bed. Maybe it's during nap time. When my older two daughters were toddlers and when they were young and they were taking naps, I didn't get to necessarily take a nap. I needed to take the advantage of that time to write my college papers. But it's about finding, how do I incorporate something within this time? For me, when they were little, it was about going on a walk with them in their stroller, actually in a double stroller, to be quite honest. So nap times can help, transition times can help, break times can help. Sometimes my walks are 20 minutes, and sometimes I actually go for a hike and I have a couple of hours. It depends on a lot of different things. And so it's important to think too of, what type of activity can I do? What type of activity can I do? It's important to ask these questions because self-care can be done in short increments of time, and for busy moms, it may need to incorporate your family or your support system in some sort of way, especially when your kids aren't in school at all. Like if you homeschool, if it's summer break, if it's spring break, if there's some sort of extended absence, if there's illness, like these are things that are gonna change what self-care looks like for you and what resources you have. And resource includes time. Time is a resource. I'm going to share some self-care practices in 3 categories as it relates to the body, the mind, and the soul. It's important for me to address these three parts of ourselves because they are all connected, and wellness cannot be compartmentalized. It's all connected. When thinking about the body, it's important to consider that the body is the part of us that physically carries us through our days. It takes in and it holds on to every experience. Sometimes we carry our stress physically before we even recognize it emotionally. We might recognize a headache or a stomach ache before we even realize that we feel stressed. So our body tells us a lot. It gives us a lot of information. And when it comes to self-care for the body, I just want to offer a few ideas that you can consider because, again, we're all made differently. So we all might have different ways to decide what works for us. And so it could be movement, exercising, dancing. This can look like stretching while your kids are playing, or going for a walk together, or going for a walk alone. Again, it could be a short walk. It could be as little as 15 minutes, and it could be by yourself or with your family. Making sure, another way of self-care is making sure your body is hydrated by drinking plenty of water. Being mindful of your nutrition and eating habits. So this one was challenging for me, or it's been challenging for me. There was a time when I challenged myself to only eat while sitting at our dining room table if I was home, that I would take deep breaths to settle down before I ate, and I chose not to eat while I was driving. And that was just a time and a season where I was trying to reset my nervous system and reset what it looked like for me to have my meal and, have a healthy digestive system while I was eating. Our bodies can sometimes be treated like an enemy instead of a dwelling place when we rush through things, when we don't take the time to fully be in the moment. And, but the body is the place where we dwell. And movement is part of the way our body was designed to function. Treating our body well is something that was intended for us to do. And for the moments when you feel like you have a lot of energy building up inside but can't necessarily get up and go for a walk, having a fidget or a sensory item can help with getting some of that movement out. Sometimes even a light weighted blanket can help just to cover the body and feel like a hug. These are some ideas that only scratch the surface of how we can care for the body. Now let's talk about the mind. The mind is a place within our body that is constantly working, thinking about what's happening around us, what comes next. It's the place where plans are put together, decisions are made, and our inner critic is ready to have a say. When we aren't in our healthiest place, the mind becomes the place where we overthink, where we remind ourselves of past hurts, and where we guard against possible threats, or we even get into our feelings and emotions in unhealthy ways. Coping skills for the mind include reframing your thoughts into positive or neutral statements, reminding yourself of times when you've worked through something hard instead of believing something is impossible, or instead of believing everything is possible. Because another thing that the mind can do is look at things in an overgeneralized way and from a negative lens. It's the place where we might have to silence our inner critic, and this could be so hard for women to do. I know most of us have a mean girl inside that likes to turn on us and whisper thoughts and beliefs about ourselves that we would never, ever say to a best friend or to someone that we love, and that is the inner critic. So we have to silence that inner critic within our voice sometimes. Another coping skill for the mind can be writing. This can be writing creatively or journaling. It can also just be to give any overwhelming or repetitive thoughts a place to land. This gives our thoughts an outlet, helps us to see like a visual space to see what it is that we're thinking about, or to see what the plans are and how to prioritize things. important to give our thoughts a place to live outside of our mind, especially when we continue to rethink things and ruminate on certain thoughts. Engaging in a brain-based exercise like completing a crossword or a word search or a coloring activity. For a while, even those number puzzles, I can't think of what they're called right now, but these are just ways that keep our minds active but give us something to do. And they're so good for us. Drawing, sketching, or painting, if you have a creative side to you, these can be so therapeutic and they can offer you so much. These activities are grounding, and there are a lot more benefits to engaging in a paper and pen activity than by engaging in something digital. Listening to some of your favorite songs that have an energetic beat or even a positive message. Reading a book. And there are so many options out there to read. If you consider fiction, it can give your mind a break from reality, and you can use your imagination to picture the setting and the characters. And if you've ever read a fiction book, if that is your cup of tea, then a lot of times if there is a movie that comes out, this is why the book feels like it's better than the movie, because in our mind, when we imagine the setting and the scenes, we paint a picture that just draws us in, and we are almost like a character within the book, just in the storyline, watching everything unfold. If you prefer to read nonfiction books, this can help you learn more about yourself or a subject that you're interested in, or learn about somebody else's life. You can practice being present in the moment by engaging your five senses in the space that you're in. You can look, listen, feel, smell, and taste in a very intentional way that gets you out of your thoughts about past or future events and into the present moment. And now I want to talk about the soul, because the soul is the place where we acknowledge our Creator. It's the place where we tend to spiritual matters. We tend to our heart. We tend to the thoughts. It's all connected, like I said, body, mind, and soul. But it's the place where we make space for what God is doing in our lives. It's the place within us that needs connection with our Maker. And coping skills for the soul may include prayer. This can be writing prayers out, speaking them out loud, asking someone to pray for you, or praying with a friend. Meditating on verses that reinforce God's promises about what you are struggling with, which means thinking about these verses, reading them, highlighting them, or even writing them out, or even memorizing them. You can look up these verses by topic or by stories, or go through the Psalms. And my favorite part of God's Word is that there is lament in it, that you can be real with God when it comes to your feelings and whatever struggles you might find yourself in. You can sing along with a worship song, and thankfully there are so many to choose from. You can participate in a Bible study. You can complete devotionals through a book or even through a Bible or prayer app. And notice that this is the only idea that I shared that incorporates more interaction with technology. Of course, streaming music, if you're not just turning on a radio in your house, also incorporates technology. But the point is that you want to be as present in the moment as you can, and none of these coping strategies included scrolling on apps or getting on phones, because we can talk about those things in a different topic on a different day. But we started with the need to know how we feel and what we need. This can sound simple, but it has proven to be a hard question for a lot of moms to answer. We looked at different ways to incorporate self-care into our day by making it small and within reach, which makes it sustainable. We considered activities that can be done with our kids, that can be done in short increments of time, that could be done before they wake up, before they go to sleep, or alone, things that we prefer to do alone. And something else that you can consider doing is to pair different coping strategies together. And I want to list a few ideas of what this can look like before we wrap up. By pairing an act of self-care with something you have to do or something you're already doing, it can become even more realistic to put in place, like going on a prayer walk, which literally means pray while you walk. Listening to a feel-good playlist or worship music while, again, going for a walk or going on a run. Listening to nature when you are throwing out the garbage, picking up kids from school. It doesn't always have to be the radio or music, but you can have a positive playlist ready to go. It could be upbeat, it could be inspirational, it could be instrumental, it could be a focus music playlist that plays while you're washing the dishes, while you're cleaning the house. It can be praying while you're in the carpool line, or even talking with a friend while you're in the carpool line. This one would incorporate a phone, or get out of the car and talk to one of the other moms in one of the other vehicles while you're waiting in line. Of course, before traffic starts moving, you want to be safe. So as we close this episode and you start to think of what self-care can look like in a practical way for you in your current season of motherhood and parenting, I want to remind you that you don't have to make big, sweeping changes to your life to care for yourself well. We might think that we have to make big changes and we have to do some sort of, deep work in order to do something for ourselves, but it can be simple. It can be small. Healing can begin in those small moments. It can be in a walk. Healing can be found in a prayer. Healing can be found in a deep breath, or even in a song. Small acts of self-care practiced consistently can become the support that you need to feel, respond, and care for the people that you love, and that you could do that well. So as you move into the week ahead, I want to challenge you to choose one small act of self-care that feels realistic and manageable and sustainable for you. I want to ask you to put it in place and remember that your needs matter too. Thank you so much for listening to this series on self-care. We do have another episode coming up on self-care. If you haven't listened to the other episodes in this series, go back and listen to them. And if you're wondering why we're talking about self-care, you can even go back and look. If you're on YouTube, you can watch the videos, or you can listen on your favorite streaming platform to the episodes on the Burnout series as well. Thank you so much for being with me on Mom's Way to Wellness. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you thought of someone who can use the encouragement that you received from this episode, please share it with them. If you would like to receive the monthly newsletter and insider information about the show, you can sign up to be part of the Mom's Way to Wellness community at aidamaravillas.com.